A group of divers goes to the bottom of a deep body of water. They find a small chest and immediately open it up. A strange wooden mask floats to the surface. At the same time, we're introduced to the main character of the story, Stanley. He is a bank employee and also an absolute loser. One day, a beautiful blonde in a red dress comes to his bank. She sits down next to Stanley and asks him to open a bank account for her. This is a famous singer named Kristana, and she is not really interested in financial documents. She has a hidden camera in her bag and streams video to a group of bandits led by Dorian who intend to rob this bank. After work, Stanley goes to an automobile service shop to get his car back, but it needs a major repair, and the mechanics lend the man their car for a while. As a result, Stanley arrives at the nightclub in a real piece of junk. His friend Charlie goes inside in the company of cute girls, but Stanley is not allowed in and is thrown out of the club. At that moment, a fancy car brakes next to him, and the very beautiful Kristana comes out of it. She kindly greets Stanley and laughingly looks at his ancient car. And sure enough, the car breaks down right in the middle of the road. Stanley tries to fix it, but a few more parts fall off. He stands on the bridge in despair and notices someone in the water. Stanley rushes to his aid, but it turns out to be just a pile of trash. However, in this, Stanley notices a strange wooden mask and takes it with him. Back home, the man listens to the displeasure of the landlady from whom he is renting. In the room, he is met by his only faithful friend, a terrier named Milo. The dog is very interested in the mask. Stanley decides to try it on, and suddenly the mask literally becomes part of his body. Milo hides frightened under the bed, while his owner rushes around the room and eventually turns into a very smug man in a suit and a green mask on his face. Stanley, in his new look, goes to have some fun, but before he does, he trashes his grumpy landlady's house. The woman takes a shotgun, but Stanley now has a bunch of superpowers, including incredible speed and the ability to fall from a great height. Once on the street, the man breaks the car of an overeager driver. He walks merrily down the street, but suddenly finds himself in the midst of a crowd of local thieves and gangsters. Stanley puffs up the villain with some rubber animals and then the very real machine gun, from which he immediately fires a bunch of bullets. Now, Stanley wants to get even with his abusers. He breaks into the mechanic's shop who gave him the wreck and turns everything upside down. Waking up in the morning, Stanley thinks it was just a dream. However, a policeman Kellaway knocks on his door and says that during the night, an unknown robber broke into their house and attacked the hostess. Our hero lies that he was sound asleep and heard nothing. Stanley is late for work, and Milo helps him find his keys. The man throws his dangerous mask out of the window, but it immediately returns to his room. At work, Stanley is scolded for being late, but the man thinks only of last night, and also of the beautiful Kristana. A reporter named Peggy comes to his bank and asks him if he knows anything about an incident at a local machine shop. Stanley lies again that he knows nothing about it. At night, our hero dreams of meeting the luxurious Kristana. He is successful and rich, and the blonde licks his ear. But in real life, Milo does it. Stanley wakes up in a terrible mood, looks at the newspaper clipping with Kristana, and then at the mask. The man puts his mask back on and turns into a superhero with a bunch of magical powers. He goes to his bank to get some money for admission to the nightclub where Kristana is performing. Only at the same time, the bank is about to be robbed by criminals from Dorian's gang. Stanley cleverly outruns them and appropriates a whole bag of looted money. He arrives at the club in a luxurious white limousine, throws the money around and enters without any problems. The gorgeous Kristana appears on the stage and sings a romantic ballad. Stanley looks at her with admiration. Stanley and Kristana have a rousing dance. They become real stars on the dance floor and amaze everyone with incredible acrobatic tricks. Their dizzying dance ends with a kiss. At the same time, one of the gangsters reports to the boss that the bank robbery was foiled by a man in a green mask. The leader of the gang notices Stanley on the stage and orders his elimination. A gunshot sounds, but Stanley doesn't care for it. People run away with screams, but Stanley stays and dances merrily under the bullets of the gangsters. When he gets tired of it, he plays a trick on the villains, pretending to be wounded, but then gets an Oscar and runs away. The police arrive at the club and arrest Dorian on suspicion of bank robbery. Kellaway notices a scrap of Stanley's pajamas on the floor of the club and realizes that he is involved in the crime. Stanley is woken up by a loud knock on the door. It is Kellaway again. Stanley opens the closet and a mountain of money falls out. He tries to shove the bills back in, but there are too many. After hiding the money, Stanley opens the door and lets the cop inside. The man says he's been home all night. The detective shows him a scrap of pajamas he found, and Stanley lies that he had such pajamas, but it was stolen. Meanwhile, the police and bank workers study security footage and realize that the bank was robbed by a masked man. Kellaway wants to get Stanley's fingerprints as he is sure it was him who did it. At the same time, Dorian promises $50,000 to anyone who finds the masked man. Stanley comes to the bank to work and is reprimanded by his boss again. But this time, he doesn't tolerate the hurtful words and snaps back. Charlie is surprised by the change in his friend's behavior and suggests that he go to the club for a charity ball. At that moment, Kristana appears in the bank. She admits to Stanley that she doesn't have enough money to open an account, and also talks about her admiration for the mysterious guy in the green mask. Stanley says he knows him and promises Kristana that the mask will be waiting for her at sunset at Landfill Park. Stanley shows his mask to an expert, and the scientist is convinced that our hero's mask depicts Loki, the Scandinavian god of cunning. Stanley puts on the mask to show how it works, but nothing happens. The thing is that Loki, the night god, his mask can only be active at night. Stanley waits for Kristana on a park bench for a long time, and finally she appears, a little surprised because she expected to see a mask and not Stanley. He leaves and the mask appears instead. However, he behaves too brazenly and vulgarly, so he gets a hit from the girl between the legs. But the mask does not intend to give up so easily. But at that moment, the police appear. Kristana runs away and Stanley is handcuffed and searched, finding a bunch of different gizmos in his pockets. While the cops are in shock examining these findings, Stanley uncuffs himself and runs away, but a whole crowd of cops get in his way. The cops are about to open fire, but Stanley begins to dance, sing, and party, and the cops dance along with him. Kellaway demands his colleagues to stop dancing, and our hero runs into an alley and removes his mask. At that moment, a car with Peggy, a reporter, appears nearby, and the woman helps Stanley evade the chase. Peggy says she saw Stanley take off his mask and demands an explanation from him. The man admits that he loses control of himself while wearing the mask. The reporter hands Stanley over to Dorian for $50,000. The main bandit puts on the mask and turns into a creepy, demonic creature. The bandits break into Stanley's house and take the stolen money from the closet. Milo runs outside and rushes after them in pursuit. The criminals drive past the police station and throw Stanley out of the car right as they drive away. Kellaway is very pleased and immediately places our hero in custody. Sometime later, Christine visits him in prison, and Stanley confesses to her that he is the mask. The girl says that Dorian is planning some crime. Stanley advises her to leave town immediately, and Kristana confesses to him that she likes him without the mask. When Kristana leaves the police station, she's immediately attacked by Dorian's men. Stanley sees this and realizes he must save the woman he loves. He calls Milo to him and the dog jumps right into his arms. Stanley asks his friend to bring him the keys from the cell and the dog successfully fulfills his command. On the way out, our hero meets Lieutenant Kellaway and threatening him with a revolver he found, forces the man to take him out of the police station and take him to the club. At the same time, Dorian also takes Christine to this club, where there is a charity ball organized by criminal authority Nico for the city elite. The richest and most influential people of the city are there. They drink, dance, gamble, and look forward to Kristina's performance. Wearing a mask, Dorian breaks into the club, destroys his rival Nico and his men, then ties Kristana to one of the palm trees and sets a stick of dynamite at her feet. Stanley orders Kellaway to call for backup and himself sneaks into the club, where he immediately falls into the hands of the thugs. Milo runs into the club following the owner. Kristana asks Dorian to give her a goodbye kiss. He takes off his mask and the girl knocks the mask out of his hands with a leg kick. Milo jumps, intercepts the mask, puts it on himself, and turns into a monster with huge teeth. While the dog fights the bandits, Stanley fights Dorian and defeats him. Afterward, Milo jumps into his arms. The man takes the mask off the dog and puts it on himself. He drinks a cocktail and in the final seconds of the timer, swallows a dynamite stick. Stanley turns a decorative fountain into a giant toilet and flushes Dorian down the drain, then removes his mask. The police burst into the club and arrest all the thugs. The mayor of the town saw Dorian wearing the mask, which means he was the one who actually robbed the bank. The man orders Kellaway to clear Stanley of all charges. Our hero, along with Charlie and Christine, arrives at the place where he once found the mysterious mask. The girl throws it into the water and kisses Stanley tenderly. She loved him as he is. Charlie jumps into the water to return the magic mask, because it gives its owner unlimited power. Only he's beaten to it by Milo. That's all for today. What do you think of this movie? Write your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more such videos.